Welcome to the podcast, episode 8. Today we got a special guest. He is a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt. He is a pro wrestling, Jiu Jitsu, and overall martial arts fan and historian, head Brazilian Jiu Jitsu coach and owner of Zanshin Jiu Jitsu in Perry, Georgia. My good friend, John Thomson. Welcome.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah. So we're going to do our gut check round. And then we'll get into who you are and how you came to be.
All right.
All right. What's your daily routine? Like when you get up in the morning, what do you do?
Basically, it just depends. My regular day job is at the plant that I work is shift work, so I'm kind of used to not having a routine. I kind of have an erratic schedule. May have to work different hours on different days, and first thing's got to have is coffee, and
100.
Yeah, I probably drink probably about seven or 8 cups a day, and it's a vice, but I don't have too many vices. I'm okay with it.
When it comes to coffee, are you like a stickler? You like this brand, or you go to this store or shop in your local area, like?
All right, this is terrible to say because I guess we're kind of in the health industry.
Okay, yeah, to some degree.
All right, but that French vanilla coffee mate creamer is really spectacular, and I know that it might be loaded in sugar, but when you're like trying to look at like life as a whole, and you're like, hey, I have this bad habit and I have this bad. Health habits, so I'm gonna eat that. I'm gonna drink that coffee mate creamer. Until I come up with something that's healthier and just as tasty.
So you like the creamer, and doesn't matter what brand of coffee.
I like that Giovanni. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah,
I love
that's
that.
pretty good.
I love that Giovanni, and it's for the price too.
Mm-hmm.
I like a Dunkin' Dark. I don't get into the whole brand thing. Like I know when I'm cruising on Instagram, I see like sponsors of like all these the newest coffee company, and it's like some very attractive chick holding a gun, or what I mean, and it's like this brand. Like I don't care. Like I need it needs to not have a bitter aftertaste, okay, and I need to be able to taste it through the creamer. I'm not going to use too much creamer. And if I don't have creamer, I'm just going to use heavy cream and a little bit of sugar. Mm-hmm. But I'm a big fan of espressos and cafecitos. Shout out to Cuban Island Cafe on 247.
What's a cafecito?
Dude, if I knew, I could tell you, but all you do is you go to a Cuban restaurant and you ask for a cafecito, and they hand you this little bitty cup, and I can drink about 4 of them, and they're absolutely delicious. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes they put a little sugar in the bottom of it, but
okay, I know what you're talking about.
Something about the way that they brew it. I don't even need the sugar or anything. Like it's almost like it takes all the bitterness out of the flavor of the coffee. Mm-hmm. It's really just tremendous.
I like a bittery taste in my coffee.
Do you drink sugared iced tea? Do you like regular tea?
So you like sweet tea?
Yeah,
I love sweet tea.
But like you drink regular tea?
Yeah, like sweet tea, but not unsweet tea.
Unsweet tea.
No, I don't drink your New York unsweet tea. No,
I mean I was raised on sweet tea, but every time you go to New York, I remember being at a restaurant with my dad and be like, yeah, I want sweet tea, and
they don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, my old man would like looked at me and he just kind of grinned because he knew what I was about to get. I got
an unsweet tea with 3 sugar
packets.
And when you do that, it never tastes right. We all know that.
You can't make iced tea that's already been chilled cold or sweet. It has to be brewed, the southern way.
So since we're talking about Cuban coffee or Cuban Island Cafe, I get the colada.
Okay.
And it's Cuban coffee. I don't know exactly how it's brewed either, but sometimes like they'll bring it to me just in a cup. Yeah. But a lot of times when you order it, you'll get it in like a cup like this. But then they give you that little, it's like a thumb nimble like cup. It's very small, and you pour it in, and you just like what you're talking about. And 4 of those, you're you're wired, you're shot.
A cafe con leche. I know I'm probably like
Cafe con leche.
Yeah, butchering the pronunciations, but those things are delicious too. And there's cream and sugar in those.
Yeah.
You know, that's almost like because I get like Starbucks, I'll get that French vanilla cafe latte, and I'll ask them to put an extra shot of espresso in it. That's legit.
Okay, all right. Well, what about nicknames? Growing up in jiu-jitsu, in high school, like any nicknames growing up?
No, I was a big fan of Crocodile Dundee.
Okay.
All right, so like when I was like in that 5-6-year-old range, I had like a big plastic Bowie knife. I used to call myself Alligator Johnny. So
you gave yourself a nickname.
I gave myself a nickname, but my uncles at the time thought it was hilarious. So I still get called that occasionally.
Alligator Johnny.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. How far would you take the Alligator John D gimmick? Like,
it just depends on. Well, like I mean, for one thing, if you're doing anything, you got to live the gimmick.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Keep it kayfabe. You got to.
You have to go full blast, and I think that's the problem with some people is they just they're given a gimmick, they're given an opportunity, and they don't just take it.
They short sell it.
Yeah.
Or they no sell it, even worse.
Well, they think it's a rib,
yeah.
and it's not. And oftentimes people they're almost insulted at opportunity because the people that are trying to give them the opportunity have this vision for that person, and they just can't take it from there. They can't express or articulate their vision for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if they could, things would work out different.
So, other than that, you didn't play you didn't get one on the hockey team or the football team or on the mats. No nicknames.
No. I played some organized sports when I was growing up and stuff like that. We didn't. I didn't really have any nicknames or anything like that. And then I kind of got cheated out of a lot of organized sports when I hurt my leg when I was growing up. But I didn't really have any nicknames or anything. I was pretty chill. Pretty low-key.
Alligator John D. I dig it. When it comes to training, what's your favorite piece of training equipment?
For jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, like when you're training, and it could be something like you could just say the mats, or you could say the gi, or if you have a particular brand, like he's big on the mouthpiece. He thinks like that's his favorite piece of training equipment. What's your favorite training equipment piece?
Oh man, my spats.
Spats.
Yeah, I mean, like, cause you put on those long tights, and it's just like you're reliving like the glory days of WWF wrestling and stuff like that.
So I'm a big fan of spats.
Yeah.
I like shorts too, but I don't do the spats and the shorts.
Okay.
I can't do them both.
Yeah.
For me, it's got to be one or the other. And people think that I'm weird because of that.
Okay. I can understand that, because I kind of feel weird when I put the shorts on over the spats because I wear them. So I just started going old school. I bought actual trunks to put over my spats.
Trunks?
Yeah, like wrestling trunks, like you would see like Ric Flair wear.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just put on my spats and I put on my trunks.
I respect it.
Yeah.
I gotta just do one.
It just keeps everything confined, keeps everything tight and everything, and to where you don't have to worry about it, and then you go.
Okay. So with me, I do that underneath though. I have I always wear. Yeah. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy that always wears a cup.
Okay.
Like if I'm drilling. If I'm teaching, I got a cup on, so I wear the diamond cup, and it's got like the insert. It's all one unit, so it keeps everything tight underneath. Then I just pull the spats or the shorts on over the top.
Yeah, I'm not a big cup enthusiast. Whenever I was doing judo, I had some jailbreaks, and this is back before like the diamond and cups have kind of come a long way in the last decade.
The diamond cup, MMA cup, you gotta see this thing.
Before that, you had the I don't even know what you would call the two straps that went under your butt. Yeah,
and that stupid looking cup.
The banana cup, and it was just
damage than anything else. Yeah,
and when I really look back at grappling, man, I've been hit or got grazed maybe 3 times.
Bless you.
You know what I'm saying? It's but I think that's from not wearing the protection. Like, honestly. But when I was, like I said, when I was wearing it in judo, because I wore it religiously when I was doing judo, about the second jailbreak, you're like, I'm either going to, have a serious injury from the cup, or I'm just going to, forego it. And then that's when I started using the compression, shorts and things like that.
What's your biggest pet peeve on the mat?
Unclipped fingernails and dirty fingernails, unclipped toenails, people picking toenails or picking their fingernails on the mats.
Yeah,
I've kicked people off the mats. I'm pretty chill as far as like negative behavior. Like if somebody's got like a behavior on the mat, like I'll kind of pull them off to the side and like kind of
educate them.
Yeah, educate them, be chill and everything like that. But like when I see nails and stuff like that, like because my coach is a musician, he has really long sharpened nails to play guitar with, and he has always had tape and protected everybody he's trained with. And that so I know that when I see him on the mat, he's sitting cross style and he's taping these fingers. He's doing that for everyone else's protection. I see other people that just don't care.
One thing that you might want to mention to him, because I know that he has a big following in some circles, is he should do a video on how to tape your fingers for a musician. Because I know we have several here. Like we have one of our assistant instructors. He plays guitar for the Air Force. So like maybe like a video like that might help, because I know that we have lots of artistic people that do different stuff. Some are painters like yourself. Maybe we'll talk about that. And then some of them are musicians. I think that if the musicians understood that there was a way for them to maintain the length of their nails, and also like so that way that they didn't hurt themselves in their instrument playing. A lot of people were scared just to train jiu-jitsu, period. So maybe if there was like a video he could do, maybe mention that to him.
That'd be a great idea. By the way, we're talking about Professor Eric Silver from Nashville, Tennessee.
There we go. Give him a shout out.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite takedown? Could be the one that you do, or just could be one that you like to see people do.
Okay. It'd be the Kataguruma, which is basically a farmer's carry. Gi and no gi variants. You can use Greco entrances and not touch the legs, which is now the judo rules too. You can go old school. You can go do it from arm drags. You can run it with the same series as a high crotch and turn it into a single leg from there. It's just, to me, I don't have a real bit of hesitation going for it. It's just always been there for me. And,
I had a good one about 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
Yeah. Sweet.
I tell you, man. The basic scissor sweep has been working for me for almost 15 years now, and I still have I've improved on my scissor sweep every year that I've trained, and I still catch people at most every level that I've trained with it. I don't think because they're not expecting it, just because the way that you hit it. And other than the scissor sweep, I have been using a lot of more just basic deep half guard entrances, and that's more for just keeping my spine straight and just trying to protect myself. I'm all about self-preservation now.
Yeah. All right. Guard pass.
Let's see. I do like to stand and do an X pass, work the legs like that. But I've got the just basically, we call it like just the single underhook pass. It's our most common pass, and there's a lot of pressure generated from it. I know some people would call it the Hickson pass, but it's just how we teach at the blue belt level.
That's like kind of like an over-under pass, but you're pinning the other leg with your shin, and you just come under and walk around.
Yes,
basically it.
Yep. Because when you go into that position, I have two options. I can either pass with the single, or I can just cross over. And so anytime I can put myself in a position where I can do two things from one position, and I can either choose or you choose for me, depending on your reaction. I like things like that.
I like when, if you really commit toward that underhook side, then obviously the more you go that direction, and if they start to use retention to, they post on the hip, and since you're getting farther toward the underhook side, then you're getting less pressure on the leg. So as you really fully commit to that underhook side, as I start to retain, I like it because it can very easily turn into a double underpass.
Right.
And then that's that's one of the ones I like the most. But that combination from that position is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about submission?
Straight armbar, and Kimura.
From guard, or doesn't matter?
And it doesn't matter. I call it the arm crush. I know some people may have different names for it, but it's just just straightening the other person's arm the opposite way from either guard or do it at the top. I do it with my head and my arm.
Okay.
I catch it from a lot of different positions. If I'm in top position in side control and I move into it, I call it the tree of woe.
Okay.
And then because it's almost like you put the person in a crucifix, and then just kind of spread your body out, and it kind of spreads your base out, and then they're not able to move, and they're going to give up their arm.
Really cool solution.
Other than that, I just see it lends so much, because when I go for those straight arms, the arms start getting bent, and if I've created those wedges in place, when the arm comes bent, it can't go back. It can't go close to their body, and that's when I start setting up more of the Kimuras and go back and forth. I'm more about wedges and keeping those arms separated than I am necks, which I don't know if that's the best method, but I've always told my students to do what I say, not what I do. So, I think that from a combat perspective, or from a jiu-jitsu perspective, you should always be looking for airway, big joint, little joint.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
That's what we were talking about. That it's not a rule or a law. It's a theory.
Right.
That my theory, it's very blanketed. But the further you get away from the neck, it's less of a percentage for a finish.
Exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, you can if you do 100% of your time in footlocks, well then that doesn't apply to you. Again, it's not a law. It's theory, and it's kind of really more to put a concept of a style that one should play, at least in a fundamental progression. Is like you said, neck, big joint, little joint. This would be more of a little joint,
But you're moving down the chain.
Hip lock, knee lock, ankle lock. Yeah.
And I'm not only am I a proponent of that theory, I teach that theory, but it's just like when I deal with my kids. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, don't do what I do. Do what I say.
Yeah.
Okay. But
I'm with it.
I don't want to hear any excuses when they see me roll and I hit a wrist lock or something like that. It's like, hey, don't worry about what I'm doing. You just worry about what you're doing.
Have you ever got into acai? Have you ever had acai? Jiu-jitsu. It's like part of the jiu-jitsu culture.
All right, look, man. I've been in part of the jiu-jitsu culture for a long time now.
Yeah.
And when everybody was talking about acai and everything like that, number one, I am American first.
Okay.
All
right.
So let's just let everybody else have the acai. Okay. I'll have a
So what do you like for a post training snack? What's your snack of choice that you like?
Let's see. It depends. Usually it's Modelo Especial.
Okay.
And I've tried the whole vegan thing. I say I tried it. After a few days, I feel like my muscles are eating themselves. And I'm not somebody who lifts weights and works out tremendously when it comes to like bodybuilding, but I have to have protein.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's usually my go-to. If I haven't eaten enough protein that day, after training, I'm searching for it. And post-training snacks always going to be, just some eggs. I can do an omelet. I like to cook, so I can whip up some things pretty fast.
Cool. What about your favorite jiu-jitsu and favorite MMA fighters of all time?
Okay.
And if you feel really conflicted to name one, you can name the 2 or 3 that come to mind.
Okay, I'll give 3 jiu-jitsu people. Okay. and some of them have crossed over into MMA. All right, but BJ Penn. All right, yeah, a lot of people, especially some of the people that might be coming into jiu-jitsu now, don't understand how phenomenal BJ Penn was.
And beat your face against
Yeah.
the wall if
I
you
mean,
don't know who he is or
Yeah,
how.
I mean,
If you think, who is this guy who's lost 6 in a row? If you're
Yeah.
that guy, go face smash yourself up against a concrete wall.
exactly. I mean, because we all have peaks and at different times in our lives and everything. But he, when you look at what BJ Penn was doing in the late '90s, early 2000s jiu-jitsu scene, that was pretty amazing. Let's see. I'm a pretty big fan of Hodger, Gracie, and Damian Maia too. I think that their styles are, I would say, old school in a sense. Obviously Hodger's pretty fundamental in his movements, but I don't think old school is necessarily a set of techniques. I think old school is more a mentality of what you're trying to do in jiu-jitsu. The techniques can change. You could be doing a more modern competition style but still be old school.
So those are like 3 really good names because, first off, all 3 are jiu-jitsu world champs.
Yeah.
2 of the 3 are ADCC competitors, but only one of those 3 was jiu-jitsu and MMA world champion.
Right. No, BJ Penn.
Pretty cool. So if you guys are out there and you literally don't have any reference point of what BJ Penn did, you might have known that he was world champ, or he tapped out Matt Hughes in 2004. Like if that's who you are and that's the extent of your knowledge of BJ Penn, I would urge you to. I'm sure during this Corona season, there's a free Fight Pass subscription. I don't know that, but I know they've always done a free 1 week. Do yourself a favor and go watch as many of his fights that you can. There's ones on YouTube you can watch. His fights in K1 Heroes or Max or whatever they were calling, Inoki Boombaye or whatever.
He did his
when he
Rumble
fought,
on the Rock.
Yeah,
too,
he fought
his
in
own
Rumble on
thing,
the
too.
Rock. That was his family show where he fought Gomi when Gomi was the number 2 guy in the world. If you haven't seen the fight, and Gomi was Pride champ also.
Right.
If you guys have not seen the BJ Penn versus Gomi fight, go watch that. He went on this tear where after he left the UFC, he just kept fighting up in weight classes. So he fought at 155. He did his thing in the UFC there. He went and fought Matt Hughes, became world champ at 170. After that, he fought Renzo Gracie. He fought, what's that?
Lyoto Machida.
Yeah, but Rodrigo Gracie. He fought Renzo, Rodrigo. Then he fought Lyoto Machida at heavyweight just to really incredible martial artist, I think.
Yeah, I think that if he, his story, yeah, sure, yeah, his story was pretty cool.
It took him, 4 years to get black belt?
Yeah, something like that, 3.5, 4 years. I think he started with a guy named Tom Callos, if I ain't mistaken, and then went to Ralph, and then I don't want to really, and then to with Nova Unao, but I'm sure people can look up BJ Penn's history, but he just, if you look at his style too, obviously the guy that was uber talented, athletic wise, he could put his feet behind his head and things like that. But one of the things that I looked at his game, I didn't look at his guard. I looked at his passing. He had amazing passing, and from that era, he beat really the best in the world. On a stretch there for about 3 years, and then he went right into MMA. Right. Margarita did the same thing. He went on a tear there for a few years, and then kind of just
In MMA?
no,
only in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. One cool thing about BJ Penn's passing is that whenever you watched him, he always passed with complete and utter control.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Like
I loved it.
His opponents were always stapled, backs flat to the mat when he passed guard. And it was like, man, there was never scrambles that led to back attacks or guillotines or front headlock position. Nope. You're just going to stay flat. And there's a really cool, maybe we can post in the link, Cooter, BJJ, fucking, I'm going to butcher this, like instructional. It's like a BJJ Scout. There's a BJJ Scout study on how BJ Penn passes. I think it's specifically half guard. But if you guys go back and watch his career, man, he's just an incredible guard passer. Yeah. Cool. So that's favorite jiu-jitsu MMA fighters. Obviously, BJ Penn got to be one of those two, and Damian Maia.
I really liked watching BJ Penn. Damian Maia always felt like you can watch and learn something.
There's another BJJ Scout study on Damian Maia. If you haven't seen it, I think it's like a 3 to 5 part series on YouTube for free, you know, and it's about how he a game that I used to play that I got away from was how you attack the single leg into the half guard pull.
Yeah.
And then you can either one sweep from the half guard pull, or two, when that fails, you just continue the single leg progression. Pretty cool.
MMA fighters, I'm not 100% sure, man. Over the years, I just kind of like, they're all amazing now, but it's almost like they're all the same too. And
We've had that conversation a lot.
Really?
How the output now.
Thank you, bud.
The output now is very standard. It's very, very rigid on MMA fighters. Like this is how you got to look. This is how you got to fight. It's not like we talked about it before. Like there's not a lot of specialties anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody's so well rounded.
It is, yeah. I mean, like
They could be old school. I said of all time.
You can be,
You
yeah.
haven't really mentioned Hickson. Like Hickson did some cool stuff. He
Well-
never fought the highest level of competition, but everybody knows.
But he fought the competition that was there at the time.
Right.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. Like,
He never got the opportunity to fight
Right.
some of these higher level guys that did exist in his time either. And if he did, I'm sure he wasn't being paid what he was worth. So, I mean, I respect a guy like Hickson, but that's why he doesn't make the cut on a lot of people's lists. Not as a greatest of all time, but as a favorite of all time, because they never got to see him display some of the skills that he was capable of displaying.
Part of me, another reason why I just can't like choose like hey, this is like my favorite fighter is because I still look at martial arts as a whole. I look at Don the Dragon Wilson or Benny the Jet, and
Phenomenal
you know
martial
what I mean. Like these are guys that never fought MMA because there wasn't an MMA to fight.
Benny the Jet or Quidez.
And I mean, yeah, and it was just like these guys are people that I grew up like idolizing and seeing. So when I see fighters coming up now, it's not that like, yes, these guys are obviously more skilled, more dynamic, better athletes, yada yada, but there's eras, and you have to kind of like, you know, we're not comparing Ken Griffey Jr.'s era to Babe Ruth's era and everything like that. It's just you just assume that like, oh yeah, this person's the greatest and this person's that. It's, you know, for their time, they were the man, and we have to give them credit, you know, for their time, and never kind of. I don't want to ever want to disparage the eras, but at the same time realize that the modern day, you know, athlete coming through the UFC is pretty freaking amazing. Like these guys are awesome, you know.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
I just
I'll agree
you know,
with you on that.
yeah.
It's like they have some incredible
Yeah.
talent, cardio, athletic capabilities, and stuff like that. I like the names that you mentioned, though. Like as far as your jiu-jitsu fighters that you chose, all fought MMA at a pretty good level. Hodger included. I mean, when people ask me who the best, not my favorite, but who is the best of all time, instantly the two names that come to my mind are Marcelo Garcia and Roger Gracie, or Hodger Gracie.
Right.
And I'll definitely listen to somebody that says that Hodger is the greatest, because like he did do it all. I mean, like he literally was like multiple time black belt and ADCC world champ, and he recently came back. It's been 3 years ago or whatever, when he had the rematch with Buchecha, and just crushed Buchecha.
Yeah.
Crushed him, and it was like, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. you know.
Especially after their first match, and like, you know, they had a match, and there wasn't points, and I don't want to say you won or lost, but if it was a point-based tournament or whatever, which it wasn't, it was a Metamoris.
Right.
Buchecha crushed Roger.
Yeah.
And then Roger kind of said, "Hey, no excuses, but I was kind of sick for this thing."
Yeah.
Like, okay, you just made an excuse. It's like that kind of
Yeah.
sucks, but then he like
it's when people say it's like it's ain't an excuse. This is the reason.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
and
I know what it's like to compete,
Yeah.
like in that kind of thing. I do know that it has an effect, but sometimes it's best to
just take it and
just
go.
take
yeah.
it. And but he didn't compete. A lot of the guys that are kicking ass is because they're getting the reps at competing all the time, you know. So he goes with this break of no competition, just teaching, doing some seminars, teaching, not even fighting MMA, just being. And then he comes back and kicks Buchecha's ass. I mean, that was like, I thought that was a really special moment.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I think, you know, Buchecha is somebody who I think over the years, you know, we're gonna look back on his career and the things that he's capable of, and kind of be in awe because he's a monster.
Yeah, not only does he have all of the attributes that a heavyweight has,
Yeah.
top control, being able to crush you with a lot of pressure, but his guard game, his bottom game is like a flyweight or featherweight's game. He can do all of the crazy open guard. He can sweep to back take. His agility is unstoppable. His movement, just overall movement and guard retention from the bottom is pretty elite.
Yeah.
Very, very incredible person. Bubby mentioned Buchecha as being one of his favorite jiu-jitsu fighters of all time or players of all time. Yeah, pretty cool. All right. Your origin. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? What was your family life like?
I was actually born in Buffalo, New York. That's where most of my family is, other than about half my mom's dad's family's from down here in Middle Georgia. And so when I was real young, we moved down here. You know, it gets cold in Buffalo, and, you know, work was drying up. It was kind of a dying town at the time. And so my old man and my mom moved down here, and we lived in a real rural part of Houston County, like right there on the Pulaski County line down here. And so the people that I grew up with, we were all, you know, friends. Like, I mean, and we're still friends to this day, but we were friends because we had to be. There was nobody else around.
It's kind of like one of those things where the 30 kids in your graduating class were the same ones in your third grade class kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was just, and it was, I mean, like when I was 8, 9 years old and it was summertime and I wanted to go see a friend of mine, I had to walk 1.5 miles, 2 miles. And just because he didn't answer the phone didn't mean he wasn't home, because, you know, we didn't have internet and cell phones and things like that. He was just outside playing.
Outside, yeah.
Yeah. So we had paths through the woods that we might meet up on, whatever the case may be. But if they weren't home, well, I just walked 2 miles back home. Or I was like, well, am I going to walk the 3.5 miles down to the other part, you know,
See
to go
my other buddy.
see the other buddy? And there were times where I would put in 7 or 8 miles and nobody would ever be home. And it was just like, I'd go back home and I'd, you know, just put in a VHS tape of, like, you know, Bloodsport and just watch it, you know. So growing up, there was that, which was kind of interesting, you know, when I think back on it. But I know for my dad, it was weird because he grew up in the city of Buffalo, and he would always tell me about all the things that he had, you know, got into and everything. I was like, yeah, man, well, like, I got some woods behind me.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, you know, and we would sneak on the ponds and stuff like that, you know, and go fishing and whatnot. And went to school in Perry, which was about 12 miles away. So it was a long bus ride. And
Any siblings?
yeah, I got an older brother who pretty much helped raise me. You know, my dad was a framing contractor, and my mom worked evening shift at a restaurant. So my older brother was 8 years older than me. Pretty much, made sure I was good. And
what was like that relationship with you guys like? I mean, 8 years is a pretty good spread.
oh man, I was his tackling dummy. I
Yeah.
was like, everything like everything that he did. That was the one thing that I get on because I've got 4 daughters, and my oldest
Bless
daughter.
you.
I know. I'm getting punished for whatever past discrepancies I may have caused in my life. But anyways, my beautiful oldest daughter Reeves, if her younger sister, who is 6 years difference, 6 years younger, wants to tag along doing her, she's like, no. And I always tell Reeves that, hey, my brother took me wherever I went. I remember going on, like, my brother had a date. It's like, hey, my little brother's coming with me. And I'd be in the back seat, you know what I mean? Just like while they're driving to Warner Robins, and going on a date, and I'd be in the back seat just hanging. Where are we going, guys? Where are we going? Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And they're taking me into a movie, and the girl wants to see, Babe Pig in the City. And I'm like, no, let's do the Mortal Kombat movie.
Yeah.
There's like all these, so I remember my brother would be doing something like, and my brother's been 6'1" since he was 14. So him being 8 years older than me as a child, that's like, okay, that's the other adult in the house. You know what I mean? So I didn't know he wasn't supposed to be like smoking cigarettes or dipping or whatever the case may be. So like when I would be walking with him, like I'd be like a little kid, he'd be like, hey, like puff on this. And I would. And he's like, I'm gonna tell mom and dad that you're not supposed to be doing that. And I thought he was an adult, so like I was like, I didn't have that understanding until I remember he got in trouble, and I remember he was getting yelled at by my mom or something like that, and I realized like, oh wait, he's a kid too.
Are the forced cigarettes and Jack why you have this awesome voice? This like deep booming voice. Is that why?
Is that what it is?
I'm asking you.
Do I have a deep booming voice?
Yeah. It's
Okay.
kind of awesome.
All right, well, thanks, man.
Big bedtime sports and stuff like that.
So you mentioned Mortal Kombat just a minute
Yeah.
ago. Have you seen the new animated movie Scorpion's Revenge?
No, I haven't.
It's brand new. It's animated. I
Okay.
made my son Link watch it with me the other
Okay.
night. And in the first 5 minutes, there is fatalities and decapitations happening.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But it's animated, so it's all good. If you haven't seen that, watch that. It's actually the best Mortal Kombat movie.
That's awesome. Yeah. And then I have a younger sister too, who's 4 years younger than me, and I feel like I did a little bit of the same thing that my older brother did for me, for her, in not the same regards though, because her and I fought more than maybe my older brother and I fought a lot, but like he always had that authority over me. He was so much older, and he was just like, like I knew that like my parents weren't gonna side with him, but me and my sister, we fought all the time, and she was a pretty good martial artist growing up.
What'd she practice?
Taekwondo and kickboxing, and she was just you remember Cynthia Rothrock, China O'Brien movies, but she always, me and my buddy around Haynesville, we would always call her China O'Brien and stuff like that, joking around with her because she was so athletic and short. Like she was about 5'3", but she was just this ball of energy and athleticism. Whenever she's a Warner Robins police officer now.
Oh.
And when she got into high school and stuff like that, she kind of got out of martial arts, and it was always a disappointment to me. So she knows.
Does she have any fights?
No, she just just like taekwondo tournaments and things like that.
Kickboxing fights.
No, but
train some kickboxing.
yeah, and then I can just tell you, man, she just is like when you see talent, it's just the power that she generated with her leg kicks, and that just kind of
that's cool.
Yeah, but those are my siblings. They were fun. We all stay pretty close, talking to each other. We don't see each other a lot, but that's just because we all work.
You're adults now. What other sports were you involved with, or hobbies? I know that you're a pretty good artist. Did that start early? Did you have to play any other sports or martial arts growing up, or?
I loved football. I loved contact sports. I loved things of that nature. I played baseball and whatnot. Tried out a little bit of everything, and I'm a big sports fan anyways. I'm on ESPN. I'm keeping up. I know pretty much who's the best in the world at whatever sport there is. But like
Mike is like that.
And but growing up, and I think you kind of would understand this. We grew up in the golden era of martial arts movies, pro wrestling, and this just before the internet, before all these things, where there was like this aura around these things, that where if you were a kid, like especially a young like male kid, that's what the hell you were into. Everybody, I look back at that stuff really nostalgic, even though it's campy now. When you look at it, I have a bit of a nostalgia about that because there was like a little bit of innocence involved in it. But one thing I always loved was boxing and pro wrestling, and my grandfather was the first person who like trained me boxing. And
How old were you?
I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and I had a heavy bag. He had mitts, and we just, I punched mitts, worked a heavy bag. What was really interesting because he was, in Buffalo too at the time. He moved down here in Georgia when he retired to be close to us, and I sit there and think about the things he was teaching me back then about generating power from short distances and just my head movement and keeping my arms up, and it was very that peekaboo style that you see from like the Mike Tyson style from like Catskill, New York, trained guys. There's no lineage cross that I know of, but I just always thought that was really interesting, the things that I was learning at that age. And then he was the one that I remember opened up a phone book and was like, because my grandfather's he's still alive to this day. He lives back up in Buffalo, but he's just always concerned about his own physical fitness, and he'd always like talk to me about physical fitness when I was young, about eating healthy.
I love these old guys.
Yeah,
that talk about the importance of physical
yeah.
fitness.
And so he was a big influence on me when it comes to that, and he is the one that signed me up for Taekwondo. And he was like, yeah, you need to learn. I mean, like not just what I'm teaching you here, like let's put you in karate, and he didn't know the difference between Taekwondo and karate or anything like that, but he just knew that
a lot of Taekwondo places use karate signs.
Exactly, yeah, it was peri-athletic karate back then, and so that's what got me started in that. And
what about your art?
Painting?
Yeah.
I used to like doodling and drawing. I'm not like the best doodler or drawing or anything like that, but like I'm one of those kind of people that if I see you do something and I'm really impressed with what you do, like I'm either going to like mimic it until I can do it, or I'm going to ask you a million different questions. Mm-hmm. And I might not be able to do it, but at least I have confidence in trying, and I'm not afraid to fail. Mm-hmm. So when I think it was either a knee surgery or vasectomy or something like that, and I was watching some Bob Ross videos, and I was like, I can do that. So I started painting happy trees too, and just things like it's just fun.
But you always doodled when you were younger?
Always doodled. I always had that was one thing about my mom or anything like that. They'd be telling me about like, oh, your art's so great and everything. It was trash. It's trash. Like
you never had any like I remember when I was like second grade as part of this like fire awareness thing, we had to draw a picture involving like a fire, or the theme was like putting a fire out or fire safety.
Yeah,
You never had some kind
I
of thing in
remember
class
that
where
stuff,
you got a ribbon or anything. You never won anything like that.
No, dude, there were people I grew up with at like King's Chapel and Perry Middle and Perry High School that were just like phenomenal artists.
Okay.
And so like me, for whatever reason, I like oil painting.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun to me. I can draw a little bit, but I'll tell you, like, when I start, like, if you want me to draw something realistically, I can draw a building realistically. Or if you want me to draw a person, it's going to come out like a Simpsons character.
I got you.
You know what I mean? It's going to come out like anime. It's going to come out like in my own little doodled style, like Calvin and Hobbes. It's not going to come out like a realism.
Well, I love your watercolors. Like I've told you that before. Like when you just sent me the pictures and you're like, it's okay. Like I've never been able to do much more than like that fire safety thing. I got like third in my class,
Hey,
and
man, that's good.
I want a smoke detector. You know, like I got a free. They gave me a free smoke detector. It was like, and I think that I got to pick it up at the station where they showed me the thing. But like first place, you know, they got something way cooler than a free smoke detector. But like. That photo was trash. Like I was never good at drawing at all, and I'm always like infatuated with how the person's mind works. People that can draw, I really like that. Whether it's a pencil or whether it's painting or sculpting, really even that. Like people who are artists in that type of sense, I'm really like into how their minds work, or just the idea that they can see something, whether they look at it or they can see it in their mind and they can replicate it or turn something from nothing, a canvas, a stone, into something really beautiful. I think that that's one of the coolest things. It's because I don't have that thing. You know?
You could be like a guy or girl, I can't remember who it was, that duct taped the banana on a piece of canvas and it sold for, I don't even know how much money. Did you ever see that?
No.
Yeah, it was like a French.
It was crazy.
Yeah, they took a legit banana and duct taped it, 2 pieces of duct tape cross to a piece of canvas, and it sold in France for
like $50K or more.
Yeah.
And wasn't it like it was supposed to be like a statement on how stupid like you're gonna spend the money on this art that I just duct tape a banana.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's where I get lost, is like when you start talking about art and stuff, like it's other people's interpretation.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And I'm like
mumble rap.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, I just don't get it.
Yeah. we gotta get Lathan in here. He loves mumble rap.
Yeah.
Okay.
I tell him all the time that's trash. It's not even real rap.
Yeah,
you know?
it's not even.
But yeah, that's funny. That's a good reference. But I never got into art like that. Like I'm uncultured swine. You know, like I just really like to see somebody that can draw something.
I follow people on Instagram that are absolutely amazing. There's a guy named Cesar Santos who like draws, like he would, like if he did a oil painting portrait of us speaking right now, it would look like somebody snapped a photo.
Wow.
And then there's other people who are like abstract artists, like the guy's name is Callan Schaub, which is interesting because it's like Brian Callan and the big dude. But the guy's name is Callan Schaub, and he does all abstract, and he's got this table that spins like on a crank, so the canvas spins, and he spins these 5-gallon buckets of all these different like colors, and it just creates these amazing like streaks and all
Flows
these and it's absolutely awesome. There's a lot of geometry involved in it, and so like I can get like a Jackson Pollock, why someone would like a Jackson Pollock and why someone would like a Da Vinci or something like that, and everything in between, right? But when it comes to like putting a glass box in a room and calling it art and things like that, I think like all those places, when you like look into it, they're just fronts for drug money. Like there's no way that somebody is walking in and being like and seeing this plexiglass box with with some duck with a head cut off or something like that, like, and like, oh, I'm gonna spend $200,000 or $2 million on it, and it's like, no, you're laundering money.
Yeah.
One thing is for sure is the artists that do things like that. They are on drugs.
Exactly.
That is for sure, and good for them.
Yeah.
But like I guess the whole thing is like I like seeing somebody that can go from nothing to something. You know those people who they can hear a sound and then they can teach themselves.
That's absolutely
to play an
amazing to me.
instrument.
Yeah.
That's so cool to me. Like for me, I've always been a person that had to be. This is the way. You got to be taught to do it like this. And I always really liked those people that could see something, whether it be in their mind or they could see it, in front of them, and they could sculpt or chisel or draw or paint or play from something from nothing, or even the ability to replicate without being taught. I really have a great admiration for that.
Yeah. There were
People with tattoo and they can
Yes.
do portraits and stuff.
Yeah.
And like when they initially draw it out, like if you want a portrait of your grandmother or something like that.
Yogi
Yogi Barrett.
Yogi
Barrett,
Yeah,
Oh, man.
he used to be over
was
here in Warner
amazing.
Robins. Now
Yeah.
he's in Sonoya.
Follow him on his Instagram.
Yeah,
His Instagram
Yogi
is
Barrett.
crazy, man.
He like those people that do portraits and stuff. Like
Yeah.
you look at the drawing they do before they actually do the tattoo. It looks like a topo map.
Right.
Like it's all broken down. Like this is going to be shaded. This, and everything else. And you're looking at it, and you're like, even when they do the outline, you're like, oh my god, how is this ever going to be? Like that's crap. And then once the finished product, you're like, oh my god, it's incredible.
See, it makes me think that like you or I are looking at that thing and it's like, oh shit, we just see a bunch of blots and a bunch of like you can see the makeup of like what's going on in there, but it makes me think that their like vision is like more in depth than we are. Maybe I'm just kind of overanalyzing it, but Chris Libby is who did my last tattoo over at Heritage, and he's absolutely amazing. Some of the stuff he's been cranking out, man.
Since we mentioned Yogi Bear, I wanted to mention a Middle Georgia raised artist, Trey Mosley. This guy is what you're talking about. His mind, he's got to be on a different wavelength. You guys follow him on his Instagram. When we're talking about the duck in a box that's head cut off, he's like this kind of artist, like selling stuff in New York City type of thing now. Like
That's awesome.
he's big time, and this is him.
Yeah.
But Middle Georgia guy, pretty cool. Tell us, to get back on track.
All right, man.
Let's talk about your first experience in martial arts, the Taekwondo.
Okay.
What was it like? Where was it? What'd you think of it? How long did you do it?
I still remember my teachers. Dan Bray, he was a probation officer, I believe, at the time.
You're 13, 12?
No, I was probably 9 or 10 actually,
Okay.
and so I was pretty young. And I had a blast doing it. Not enough sparring. That was just, like, because I've always been a controlled sparer. Like I felt like I've always been a controlled sparer. I never really lost my cool or anything, sparring and things like that, if that makes sense. But I just felt like we just like didn't do enough until it was coming up time for tournament time, and then it was like I was just so happy. But he taught me a lot, and what I liked about him, for one thing, he played the bagpipes, which to me was absolutely amazing. Besides
cool.
teaching me Taekwondo, it was like he played the bagpipes, and so I was like, oh well, I would be his friend either way,
Yeah.
So like, but also the way he stood in his Taekwondo stances and things like that, he was actually a little bit more square than some of the more bladed style, like bouncy style of Taekwondo. And so like with my grandfather teaching me boxing, and then
Him having that stance
Coach
blended
Bray,
well.
yeah, it kind of blended well. So I felt like it was good. He would do his kicks really slow, trying to show you all the motion of the kick, and I still use those techniques to this day, and just felt like he was a good teacher. And then the school went, past, a lot of those schools would pass ownership to ownership. It was like
Correct.
a club type of thing.
Yeah.
And I actually broke my femur, and I had an issue going on with my bone in my left femur that I didn't know what was going on. And
Care to share how you broke it?
Yeah, I was it was all over a Spawn comic book. So so um so I told you I grew up in Haynesville, and so like the only exposure that I got before the internet, the only exposure I got to things was cable TV and Smiley's Flea Market. And I don't know if y'all remember Smiley's Flea Market, but there was comic book, little booths and stuff like that where comics and cards were sold, and that was the closest thing I could come to a comic book store.
Okay.
All right. I had some cousins that lived in Dry Branch that all went to Mountain Sales, and I remember like when I would go to their house for Easter, they would open up this drawer and they had all these comic books just like in wrappers, and it was just like labeled and everything. They had every X-Man comic book and every Spider-Man, and I'm like it was just amazing to me, and I didn't have the access in Haynesville to get any of those things, right? So but at Smiley's Flea Market, that's how I got into the old pulp comics. That's how I got into the Conan the Barbarian. That's how I got into all this stuff. And so, because these old pulp, like Weird Tales comic books that were just getting, you can get, my grandmother would give me $3 to get 40 of them. I'd get a stack of them, and it'd be old pro wrestling magazines from like the 80s in there, and I loved it. And that kind of gave me that, I think that ingrained that nostalgia in me. But one thing that I really got into was Spawn. And that was like the only new comic that I really got into. And I was visiting some relatives up in Buffalo anyways. About a 3/4 of a mile down the road in this town, there was a comic book store, and they had this Spawn. It was almost like a graphic novel with a holographic front. So I'm like sitting there like looking at trade cards. I see that Spawn comic book. I look at the time, and I'm like, oh man, I don't have enough money to get that thing. But I got it in my suitcase at my cousin's house. So I take off and I'm running. I get the cash, and I leave out that front porch, and I'm running down the road again. And there's these kids on bicycles, like from that neighborhood, like riding alongside me. And I'm flying, and all of a sudden my foot flies by my head. My femur had snapped, and I did like a somersault. And I hadn't broken a bone yet up to that point. So I'm looking at these kids flying by, like it happened so fast I didn't even feel it. And I'm like, hey, I just broke my leg, y'all. And they're like, no, I know you did. And I lifted and pulled my shorts up, and my femur was like wishbone shaped. And they were like, oh my God. So paramedics came, ambulance came. They I remember that the one dude come up, and I was wearing these like khaki, like cargo short type of things, or jorts. I think I was wearing jorts. And he's like, yeah, I think he just blew out his knee. And I lifted my shorts again for him, and you could see and he was like, oh. And, and it was like, so what had happened was, when they took the x-ray, is I had a benign tumor on my femur that was just deteriorating the bone. And so as I'm running, the bone just snapped. And in doing some research since then, there are things like heavy impacts cause tumors. Like a certain, it's like a very, very rare thing.
So do you think you're Taekwondo?
No, because we weren't doing leg kicks, but I did take a softball to the thigh, and I was like this happened when I was like 12. When I was like 9 or 10 years old, I remember getting this huge bruise from a grown man hitting a softball into my thigh when I was playing shortstop for a little bar league thing. Remember, my mom was working at that restaurant.
Yeah.
And I always wondered if taking that softball to that thigh
caused that tumor.
Yeah, caught that softball in the thigh and just caused that little cyst that turned into it. Because now it's still in my leg. It's just a hardened, calcified cyst now. Yeah, it was a bad break, and Dr. Armstrong was the children's orthopedic surgeon that was like, hey, just stabilize him. I'm coming in tomorrow. And anyways, they put me in. I had pins in my legs, traction. I spent 36 days in the hospital in traction, like the whole bed sores, infected pins, everything. And then I was in a spike cast for 3 months. It was 6 months before I walked. like stood up
So
straight.
your Taekwondo
Yeah.
journey ended.
Just crashed. Yeah, and it took me about.
Did you get to read lots of Spawn comic books while in the hospital?
Yeah, they got me some.
All right.
Did you get that holographic one?
No, fuck no.
Still to this
Yeah,
day.
still to this day. It's just
How'd you find out about like MMA or jiu-jitsu?
Okay.
It's the first time you heard or found out about it.
UFC 2. All right. So you remember the old VHS tapes that you would
Rent
go
at
to rent.
Blockbuster?
Yeah, rent it. We had movie galleries around this area, and so I got UFC 2. My old man was telling me about UFC 1. I don't know how him or my brother had seen it without me, because they were always around me, but they had already known a little bit about it, I guess. And the interesting thing about it was I was just I really was kind of I wasn't mesmerized by it right away. I was just like, oh, this is just another cool thing that is out there for me. I really enjoyed it, and what got me into jiu-jitsu though was just submission grappling in general. I don't know if y'all know a boxer, Thomas Hitman Hearns.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Tommy Hearns.
Yep.
Look him up. 6'2" ish.
Yeah.
147 pounder, 154 pounder.
Yep.
Southpaw too, right?
Yeah, and I know Marvin Hagler's a southpaw.
Okay.
Either way,
But
just
just phenomenal fighter.
look up Hagler Hearns, and it's one of the greatest fights of all time. I think it goes 4 rounds, and it's just an amazing fight. But
I think my boxing coach beat Tommy Hearns as an amateur. To get on the Olympic team.
Howard Davis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, your boxing coach was one of the all-time.
First 5-time
Yeah.
New York Golden Gloves
Yeah.
champ, AAU national champ,
That's right.
an Olympic gold medalist. 1976, same team as Sugar
That's
Ray
right.
Leonard. 76 and 84 are always discussed as the 2 best United States of America Olympic teams.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what really kind of got me into jiu-jitsu was pro wrestling. And so, like I said, my grandfather was teaching me how to box. He was always talking about these 2 guys that married into our family, which is Dick Byers. People in the United States know him as Dr. X or the Destroyer. But in Japan, he was just, Dick Byers, and he was, considered one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. He and Billy Red Lyons, his real name was William Snip. Dick Byers wrestled in the AWA under Vern Gagne all over the United States. He was the true master of the figure 4 leg lock. And he wore his Dr. X mask, and Billy Red Lyons was from Toronto, and but all these guys, they married women in Buffalo. So I had this pro wrestling kind of niche in my family, and but my grandfather and my great grandfather being boxers when they come over to this country was kind of put me in this oh man, karate and boxing is the thing. And I remember watching a thing on like a WWF episode or something like that. My dad and Jim the Anvil Neidhart was coming after Tommy Hearns, and Tommy Hearns was doing a guest spot, and Tommy Hearns hit him in his gut, and he folded over, and my old man said, "Don't believe that bullshit, son." And I said, "What do you mean? That's Thomas Hearns, you know what I mean? Like, that's the hitman." And he goes, "A wrestler will always beat a boxer." And that was this is years, this is before MMA become popular. I was like really, and I knew I wasn't gonna break kayfabe, but I knew that I was like, but boxing is a legitimate contest and yada yada. And so in the back of my mind, I kind of always was like, well, okay, if a grappler beats a boxer, then then why ain't I learning that? And then a few things happened. The Bret the Hitman Hart documentary, Wrestling with Shadows, came out. The Owen Hart versus Ken Shamrock dungeon match happened.
Yep, I remember that.
And I learned what catch wrestling was. And I started, and this is the dawn of the internet. This is CompuServe, AOL, dial-up.
56K.
Yeah, and I am just like enthralled in like real submission wrestling. And I'm sitting there with my leg in braces and just pins and like I'm like, man, these submissions, there's real submissions. Like I can really put somebody out. Like I can really, like, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm like,
you couldn't do shit.
Yeah,
I know.
in
the hospital, pins in your legs.
But I'm like, where are we gonna? Where can this? Like, who's gonna like learn this stuff, right? And it was just like this. But in all honesty, if it wasn't for those moments in my life, my dad telling me that, well, my grandfather telling me about, the pro wrestlers in our family who, also trained, who were legitimate amateur wrestlers who trained in judo, and then did pro wrestling. And then, the conversations with my dad, and then these documentaries and these, shoot style matches, like I wouldn't be here today. So I gotta give, props and praise to those moments in my life.
So did you wrestle in high school?
No, my leg didn't. I did not get released to do any activity until I was over 18. So I spent about 4.5 years of just.
So what was your first experience on the mats training in an MMA or jiu-jitsu environment?
Yeah, well, I got back into kickboxing, and there was a gym that opened up in Perry for a short period of time, and it was a physical fitness gym, but they had a wrestling mat in this room, like a room where you would be doing yoga or Zumba. They had a wrestling mat, and there was a couple guys, and some of them were wrestlers from the Perry High School that had graduated at the time, and then there was a guy there who I guess did some MMA. He had some MEPS training and Kempo karate black belt and yada yada, and like I'm in there hitting the bag and kicking, and they were like, hey, you want to come do that to us? You know what I mean? Like, so because they you can tell that they didn't have a whole lot of striking experience other than the guy who was trying to teach, and so they started shooting on me while I was trying to strike with them, and I had been watching some old Fujiwara videos, like some old pro wrestling videos and stuff like that from years past, but about the third time I got taken down, I was like, I'm not gonna get taken down anymore. And then I started, and ever since then I've been studying grappling. And
you haven't been taken down since?
Yeah, I've been taken down quite a few times, but not by those people.
Bless you, Fujiwara.
Yeah. So, and that kind of started it. I did MMA for a few years, and I didn't really like it. I had some weird experiences in the trying to learn MMA in those years. Some just like.
It's like the first team you were training with probably wasn't super high level. You're training in Perry and somewhere.
Yeah,
whatever.
like we all like. It's interesting that a lot of them, like Millwood was there.
Okay.
Millwood was like a teenager, I think, and like Beal and like I don't know, 3 or 4 other guys around the area that were kind of like they kind of were bebopping like between.
What year was this?
This like 2005, 2006.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe 2007, and
So a bunch of like the local Ronins were kind of like
absolutely, yeah. And there was no real like place to learn, and then so that place closed down. The whole gym closed down, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking for a place to train. So I go to this other place, this actual Taekwondo school that said they were going to be teaching MMA.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so like so that guy that was there had taught me like what an armbar was. Like,
at the Taekwondo place.
No, at the
previous
place, and I knew what an armbar was, but I was like, I'm watching videos. We basically went in there and sparred every day,
mm-hmm.
and like and he just was like, hey, don't do that. It was more don't do that than do this. Okay, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I show up to this place in Perry, and we're doing all these submissions and everything. You know, like the spider web position.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the spider web position, top armbar, and I'm trying to break this guy's grip, and this guy's just like, you know, got this monster grip, and I'm like, hey, sensei, how do I break this grip? And I get I know what you're talking about, but it's too dangerous, and so I don't show that. And I was like, okay. So I was like, okay. Right. And then he goes, oh, by the way, we're going to Southern Alabama for some
Fights,
MMA
right?
fights. You want to come in and fight for us? And I'm like, no. I'm like, you know, like I have a job. I'm like, besides that, but I'm like, yeah, maybe if you show me this shit, you know. But so like you know, I bebop with them for a few months, and it was interesting. And then there's no jiu-jitsu. I went up to team practice one time, and nobody was there. There was like 3 guys there, and they were all just kind of rolling around. And I don't think Cam was there, your old coach.
Yeah, it's like so we trained Tuesday, Thursday night. And if
Okay.
this is like 05 or even blending in 06, I wasn't there anymore.
Okay.
But Tuesday, Thursday nights were the big nights.
Yeah.
And then in Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Cam held training in Griffin.
Okay.
So, and when I was there was no training on Monday, Wednesday. But when they joined, when he was renting the spot from Charles Wilkerson on Wesleyan and Northside, I guess Charles was still grappling and doing stuff on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with just like a couple local people who didn't want to make the drive to Griffin.
Gotcha.
So maybe you showed up on one of those nights.
I showed up.
Something like that.
Yeah, they were. They might have been finishing up, but they were like, yeah, nobody's here, and everybody's going to be doing like some fight or something like that weekend or something like that. So I was like, okay, and I drove like, you know, I was still living in Haynesville. I drove all the way up
You're
there.
like, fuck that, I'm not going back again.
Yeah, so I'm
because
like,
they didn't give you a schedule. They
right.
didn't,
Yeah. So I'm like, man, like where am I going to learn how to grapple? And I found North Macon Judo, and shout out to Sensei Kevin and Ben Walker. But I showed up, and half the class was stand up, and then we did about half the class Niwaza, and it was just a club. It was just a judo club. But when I say like the first lesson of the first class that I ever learned there was how to break that armbar grip.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, here I am. You know, and so I train with
doing
them.
I am doing the deadly techniques.
Yeah. So, yeah.
First
yeah.
day.
And so, and I loved it up there. I was still traveling. It was a long travel, but they were the actual ones. A guy named Kevin Rollins, who was there at the time. He's actually the one that talked to me and told me, he's like, hey man, you need to be going over to Bob, and Warner Robins. Bob had just opened Zanshin, and so everything that I learned up until the time that I walked through the doors of Zanshin, I consider as like I still use some of the things I learned in judo, but I don't consider my training to like legitimately start, because I had to be broken down. You're talking 4 years of just no coach, nobody telling you don't do that. No, don't, you know, hey, that's good, but we need to fix this bad habit.
Everything's bass backwards with how you're
exactly.
learning martial arts at this point.
I'm
grappling
doing
martial arts.
Exactly. So I had to be broken down at a fundamental level and then built back up. And so I credit Bob with doing that.
Mm-hmm.
That's Bob Hillis. You know?
Yeah, so I first met Bob Hillis while I was at Praxis still, before I had even gone to Top Team, and he'd just pop in sometimes. He didn't train anywhere. You know, it's like he didn't have a gym in Perry or Centerville or Warner Robins at the time, and we'd see him every 6 months or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, and we called him Purple Belt Bob.
Right.
One, because he was a purple belt, right?
Mm-hmm.
But two, he had been a purple belt for like 9 years.
Like
he had started training in like 92 or something like that.
It was 95.
Okay, he started training in 95, and he had a purple belt, and he was floating a guy with a purple belt floating Middle Georgia who had a wrestling background, a good wrestling background, and like I remember training with Bob, and it makes so much more sense now. But like I remember like tapping Bob out, and it was like a big confidence booster.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't like really understand later that he was just being a nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like he could have wrecked me. Like maybe I could have given him some problems with just how crazy my legs were, you know, but like I didn't understand till much later that like he was just letting me work, respecting the place that he walked into to not just fucking destroy everybody, but that he could have been wrecking me. But like he was probably maybe the first or second like classically trained guy with a rank of purple belt that I like submitted, you know, like but like I just learned much later, like, dude, he could have wrecked you. He was just like letting you do your thing and like training to learn and stuff like that. But that's not how we trained.
Right.
We were like training, you know, like bragging rights for the kill, but it wasn't even like that was like an everyday thing, not just for visitors. That was like, like we'd do that on Tuesday so we could have that like go into Thursday with the confidence, you know, like a prep for a fight. You know, it's just kind of funny.
That's the biggest thing I try to like express to like students now. It's like, man, like when I first started, every day was ADCC.
Yeah,
you'd be in the parking lot and it was like, all right, like this is the night we fight. And
so where was Bob doing this at?
He was on Alberta Road at the time.
Yeah, I went to that spot next to the storage units.
Across
from the storage units.
Yeah, across from there, and then
across from the Surf Pro at the time.
It was right where that like Surf Pro was.
Yeah,
and then there was a welding shop next to it too at the time.
So there was this was like a small little spot.
Yeah,
but it was it was a good atmosphere.
Oh yeah,
This was probably the second place I might have trained with him. Maybe it was the first. I think it was the second. But cool spot. I remember getting a train there a couple times, and that was like he had a lot of students there for such a small school. You know,
I'd show up and there was the mats would be full. There was plenty of people to train with, and we had we were on those thin little red mats, and like I said, it was pretty rough. But I was down for it back then, and
taking your bumps.
Yep, taking my bumps. You know, gotta working a little bit for with people that I always try to be nice to people that came through the door. I didn't realize I might have been rough with them my first year and a half of training. I didn't realize that I might have been the cause for some people to not want to
leave
jiu-jitsu.
or not come back
And so I've always taken that to heart ever since about not being like that. But we moved over to Houston Lake. We moved about 6 different locations, over the years after that. But
I trained at all of them except for one. I think it was like the one.
Which one wouldn't you have trained
The
at?
one that was. Remember, I was telling you I was thinking about moving into that little spot for a while that was on Russell and 41. That was like a former gymnastics place. You mentioned that there was a school over there that you guys were in or something. I never trained at that spot.
Okay.
But I trained at every other spot.
Yeah.
What's the training like? You just said it was like pretty rough.
It was.
When you got there.
It was rough, but it was the atmosphere was more of because every single one of us were white belts, and there were situations that would it's like, oh my God, there's a blue belt here, there's a blue belt there, like that guy has a blue belt, that guy has a purple belt, and I remember when you would come in and train, and you were advanced rank at that time.
I was like brown belt.
Yeah.
When I went to the academy on Alberta, I was a brown belt already.
Right.
And Bob was either a purple belt still, or he was a brown belt.
I think it was a purple belt because he got his purple belt. Well, I'm sorry, he got his purple belt like 2000 or 2001, but he got his brown belt like 2000 and the end of 2009.
I
and
was
he got
a brown
his
belt already.
Yeah, and he got his black belt in 2011.
Yeah, because I remember I got my brown belt before he did.
Right. Yeah.
But he got his black belt before I did.
Yeah. Dude, there was like when Bob was a purple belt, there was like a Hickson seminar up in Tennessee and things like that, and like the black belts would show up, and it was black belt, and it was guys that he had trained when he was a blue and purple belt that started off as white belts, but had went to different associations and got promoted. But he was still smashing them like he was his teacher.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah,
was
I
still,
always had really
yeah.
good training with Bob. I mean,
yeah,
like,
man.
when I did come there
yeah.
to train with Bob, like I'll verify it.
Mhm.
Bob was really good.
yeah,
The only times I ever did anything to Bob was where he did commit to do something to me.
mm-hmm.
You know, where he was like kind of got a little bit frustrated himself and was like, "No, I'm gonna pass,"
yeah,
and then I would maybe get a sweep, or where he was like, "I'm gonna sweep," and maybe
Yeah.
I get a pass. But we always had like
And
pretty back and forth training.
and it's a pretty good training partner for you too
Oh,
when
yeah.
you think about the because like when he went in his prime, he wrestled at 153 in college.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? It was just you're gonna when you were in your fighting, period of that time. Those were the guys that you were going to be going up against. That was,
yeah. And I always felt like pretty good going with him on the ground, but on the feet, I asked him to just help me out. You
Yeah.
know, like, hey, can you just like my wrestling is just suffering, man. Can you just show me some stuff? So we would start like forehead to forehead,
Mm-hmm.
not collar tie, but forehead to forehead, and he would just start showing me some more things about staying in stance. I had a lot of takedowns I knew, but I didn't have. I never like you learned MMA.
Mm-hmm.
I never learned wrestling in the conventional like
Right.
build up way. I learned it ass backwards. So he was just talking about movement, staying in stance, and advanced hand fighting. I never even got to a position to make a shot.
Exactly.
He
Yeah.
was just always in a good spot. There was no stopping my takedowns because I was never in a spot to do a takedown. And that was really like opened my eyes up to really like, man, that's really cool that I could come into, when I come back from South Florida to Middle Georgia, I can go up and train MMA with Bubby and the guys at Rush, but I could also be here in Centerville or Warner Robins or Perry, depending on where you guys were at the time, and like go to Bob's and get some good training with some guys. And even if maybe like the guys were still lower level, like the students, that Bob himself, man, he always gave me really good training.
Oh yeah.
I was always grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I always felt real confident when I trained with other people at other schools because whether it be training with Bob or training with having my training partners, that for whatever reason we just attracted bigger guys at the gym, and it was just
that's always been like almost like the joke
Yeah.
about like Zanshin
yeah
is like
I
if you're 200 pounds, you're probably the smallest guy in
yeah.
the room. Like that.
Yeah.
That's but
I remember
it's kind of a joke, but it's like
Yeah.
pretty much true.
I remember training with you one day, and I was like, and you were just asking me, just being polite, asking me questions. I was like, yeah, man. I was like 195, 200 pounds, and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm the smallest guy in the room, and there's like 10 people in there, and so, you come up to train like a couple weeks later, maybe a couple months, and we're all, it's hot in the gym. We're all done. Everybody's gis open. We're just trying to cool down, and you looked around the room and you were like, holy shit, you really were the smallest guy in this room until I showed up, and I was like yeah. I was like, it's so when I get caught in side control by somebody, I don't even panic.
Yeah,
it's
now it's nothing for you.
Yeah,
because
it's just
you've
like,
had all those
okay,
massive
yeah.
people on
So-
top of you. Yeah.
So my defense, I feel, is pretty decent in that area, and I think staying calm is the biggest, one of the biggest defensive factors that somebody can have.
I always feel that way when Tuesday nights when Shane shows up, brown belt Shane,
Yeah,
and I'm like, I got to wrestle this refrigerator, like just a beast of a man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's something else. Like
It can move.
yeah, and
when he wants to.
when he
Yeah,
wants
yeah,
to.
yeah.
It's like let's see, when Shane showed up to our school, I think in 2011, and the thing about Shane is, and I don't really want to talk well about him because he gets a big ass head, and
His head is already big.
his
I
head
don't
is
even mean
big as
ego.
hell.
He's
I
just
mean,
got
like,
a big
he's
fucking
got a
head.
big ass head. I mean, like it's connected. He always gives my buddy Skelly hell about having a big head, and there was like a half-inch difference between the two. We measured them. It was like
Shane
He's like
needs like
noggins,
he has to call New Era to get a custom hat made.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
it's ridiculous, yeah. And so he came to the school at about 225, and Shane's like almost a 500-pound bench presser.
Yes.
Like he is just like he's somebody who lifts heavy, and and like you feel it. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man. The more he's done jiu-jitsu, like he's really taken that less is more approach. Just, like he just is gonna, he's gonna do his thing, and you could show him a whole lot of cool stuff. He's like, yeah, that's awesome. No, but
The one thing about Shane specifically is I almost don't like rolling with him, and the reason I don't like rolling with him is because he rolls like how I used to have to train with some of these Dagestanis at ATT.
Yeah,
like we're in sparring and we're MMA sparring, so it's like for real. But then I'd go with these guys and they would go easy and they'd, touch, and I'd go, okay. So like the universal rule is go as hard as you would want somebody to go on to you.
Exactly, yeah.
So like when these guys are doing this, I was like, all right, so I'm touch, move, boom. Like they were just snake charming me, but because of the language barrier, I didn't know that was how they spar.
Right.
It's like a lot of this lull, and then they big full speed and power cast that punch, that overhand right to the blast double, like a T-bow style blast double, and you'd be off your feet. But that was my fault. That it's like if we're sparring, but I just didn't know that that's how they do that. Well, Shane, I'll be gassed up, and he'll straight up not do anything.
Yeah.
For the whole day. Yeah. Like he'll be on bottom side mount, bottom knee on belly, letting me work. And the next day, we'll do one round like that. And then when I come back around and we bump, he'll grab my pants and I'll grab his sleeve. And then, woo, he'll just like put the beat down on me. And again, my fault.
Yeah.
And I've learned that now. But that's the one thing I don't like rolling with Shane about is I would almost like to have a conversation like, are you going to let me crush you?
Yeah.
Or are we actually doing this?
Yeah.
If we could have that type of in fact, next time, that's
just speak
I'm going to ask him. Hey,
he's approachable.
Are we doing this? No, I know. Yeah. But yeah, so
he and I grip up, and I know how it's going to be. I know like whether unless I catch him in a submission, and then it's like wrestling a goddamn bear.
Yeah.
I mean, it's it's fun, but he's been one of my best training partners, and Mike Crawford and Tim Blue, all these guys really helped develop me because I practiced teaching on them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They were my guinea pigs, like when I was handed like.
Hold on, let's talk about that.
Okay.
How did you go from student to teacher to owner/teacher? How did that happen?
Well, in that 08, 2000, or that 2008, 2009, 2010 time period, there was an economic downturn. Okay. It was pretty rough, and Bob, at the time he was running a business too, and that took up a lot of his time. But we had a pretty regimented training. It was about 3 days a week we did the training, and at the time, Bob called me and he was like, "Hey, John, because we do pretty stringent testing in our association, and so he was like, "Hey, man, I really would like for you to be promoted to blue belt, but there's going to be some things I haven't gone over with you that you're going to be asked during the test. So let's get together and let's start training these things." And I'm like, "All right, cool." So 6 months later, I'm a blue belt or whatever, and we moved to. Do you remember our mall location?
I do.
Okay.
In the Galleria Mall. Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that excuse me.
You guys were at the old Houston Mall too, right?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, we weren't at the Galleria. We were at the old house.
Okay. I don't even want to speak on it.
But so we're I'm a blue belt, and I had my children at the time, Reeves and Maggie, and I needed to keep training, but I needed to take them with me, to training. So I needed somebody.
Not happening here at Miller Martial Arts.
Well, this is how our kids program got started.
Okay.
So we were approached. I was approached. Bob was approached, and I got kind of tasked with just running the MySpace page, and so people were hitting us up about training kids. And so they, this kid comes in and wants to train. And I was like, well, all right, yeah, come back Monday. And I would just bring my nephew for that kid to train with.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I had just 2 brand new students. And then, like, every time I got a new kid, I just go get another relative for that kid to beat up or whatever.
Right.
And that's how I built the training program. So, aspiring school owners, that's a good method to get the kids program
so,
going.
so like many schools,
Yeah.
the head instructor said, I want nothing to do with
Exactly.
this kids program.
And
but
and
you
I
take
got
it over.
I took over the kids program. I did that for a number of years, taught like every class, and then as Shane and Tim and Mike and Skelly and them got ranked, they started helping me with the kids program. But it was around 2014 or 2013, something around that time period, that I started teaching like the fundamentals classes to adults, but even before then,
As a blue belt still.
as a blue belt.
Okay.
Well, I got my purple belt in 2013. So so either way, around that time period. But I remember as a blue belt teaching pretty large classes,
Mm-hmm.
and it would just be fundamental stuff, like because Bob could make it, or
And
or
you
we just
always
wanted
have
extra
and you
training.
always have
Yeah.
brand new people coming
Exactly.
in. Always.
We had extra, and we always we might have only held class 3 to 4 days a week, but we were there every day training, and like the core group, and the core group was pretty big at the time, and we just trained, and since we had this pretty stringent testing in the association, anybody who was coming up for like a blue stripe or a blue belt, we were all like kind of in a group,
Mm-hmm.
and we're like going over the testing and going over like the techniques involved, and it was kind of like the cooperation between us all in order to get that person to the next level, because I'm not a fan. I don't teach the test even now that I have students come in. Like, I'm not going to teach you how to take the test. I'm going to teach you the techniques, and believe me, everything that you're going to get asked on the test has been brought up. I don't know how many, thousands of times.
Right.
But, I'm not going to, I'm not trying to hack the test for you, and that's how our instructors were handling us. We're not teaching you the test. We've taught you the techniques. This is the test coming up. And so it was almost like the group's responsibility to bring that.
Yeah,
those
like a
people
team
up.
atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
And so that's kind of how I got, since I was always the first one taking the test in our group, I was always the guinea pig, and then I had to, kind of translate all the material that I got during those tests. Does that make sense? That's how I got into teaching, and I've enjoyed it. I was, I've brought this up before. Teaching is something that you have to practice, and you have to. And if you think that you're a great teacher right off the rip, then you're probably not.
Bro,
And
you're telling me.
and recording yourself, and then going back a couple years and watching it.
Dude,
Wait a while. Go
You'll be
back
like,
a couple
"You're
years.
trash. You were
Yeah.
trash."
And it's just like one of those things where it takes just as much practice teaching as it does actually learning the skills. And there's a lot of guys who are ultra talented at jiu-jitsu down to a world-class level that can't teach anything.
Yeah, I've talked about
Yeah.
that. I had a student ask me, like, how'd you become such a great teacher? And I said, wow, I really appreciate you saying that, because like I literally am all the time critiquing myself on, because like sometimes you can just feel it, like the way that the students are reading it.
Yeah.
You might be dropping sick knowledge
Yeah.
for a room full of brown belts,
Right. Yeah.
but you got blue belts or green belts or white belts in the room. So knowing the room and teaching to the room is part of being an instructor. So sometimes I'll feel that, where I'm like, I get frustrated with myself. I try my best to remember what it was like to be a white belt and the frustrations that I had, or how I felt, and questions and the inability to understand. I try, but that's looking through the lens of what I have now. And when he said this to me, I was just like, man, I'm really grateful for to say that, but like, I'm not a good teacher, dude. Cause like all the time, I like am looking back and go, man, I really dropped the ball on either this technique or I forgot to mention this, which is an intricate part of making the techniques work that I said today and linking it to what I taught last week.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it could just be a phrase. It doesn't even have to be showing something. It could be just remembering to mention something that could have gotten that extra 3 people in the room to connect the dots that I thought are self-evident,
Right.
but we're not. So you're absolutely right. Like, teaching takes so much effort to become good at, and I think that people, not everybody can be good or great at jiu-jitsu. It's true. You know, I'd like to say that, you know, like, it is true. If you do it long enough, you'll be good enough to get black belt.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you're good at jiu-jitsu, right? Some people
Right.
are just uncoordinated and will never be. Some people, there will be a mental block. Some people will always be petite or have osteoarthritis or whatever,
Yeah.
you know. But you could become a good teacher if you put in the work. But it does take a lot of work,
Yeah,
a lot of studying,
It
a
does.
lot of like self-loathing even, you know, like if you want to become good at it, you got to always be evaluating and understanding the room full of students you have.
But I think that's what's going to make, you know, that's what makes people good teachers. If they're able to self-evaluate, then they reach somebody. As long as they're reaching somebody in the room and that person's continuing to train, you're a good teacher. And because I always try to, you know, like I mean, it's almost like we should have a wall of everybody who had talent that quit. You know, those people that, like, you see so much in them, and it just never, you know, matured into who they were because they got, you know, they didn't have that ability to let go of their ego and at the same time be self-aware. And so from a teaching standpoint, I think that if you're constantly questioning yourself, then then it develops into a more fundamental understanding. You know, if you're always trying to be better, because it's teaching is a practice, just like anything else. It's a practice. It's not a thing. Like, your way of teaching is not going to be my way. It's not going to be your way. It's all we might explain the same thing 3 different ways, but as long as we're able to steal from each other and always improve upon it, it's going to be okay.
That's the one thing I like about our school specifically is I don't make one guy teach this program and only this program. Like, I'll see Jesse, who's a purple belt, but he's got a lot of professional MMA experience. I'll let him teach like the intermediate Noki class.
Yeah.
It's like, because he'll, just what you said, he'll say something different than I did. We'll teach the same techniques.
Yeah.
So you might, like, you know, come in and I'll be like, hey, John, can you teach this fundamentals class for me that Lathan taught, that I taught, that Jesse taught, that Professor Taylor taught, that when Steven was here, he taught, you know, like, but like just being able to have like some different perspective on it. I do agree with you on that.
Yeah, we've talked about that too, like the different looks that you get, because the variety of teachers helps a lot, because something you're saying may not relate to me,
right?
But when he says it, I pick it up, or vice versa.
Yeah,
you know, and it's always, as a teacher, it always sucks when you come into a class and you've like laid out, hey, today we are, you know, doing whatever, and then you look around and like, oh shit, nobody's gonna get this, you know, or you put it out there like, no, this is what we're doing, and then you put it out there and like, all right, nobody's picking this up.
Yeah.
You know,
what
so
do you do? Do you call an audible?
Yeah.
Or do you stick to it and make them get it?
I call an audible every time.
I call an audible.
Yeah.
I call the audible.
I mean, you got to, like you say, you have to go to the lowest denominator in the room.
Yeah.
And you can pick up that vibe. Sometimes I've made the mistake of not picking up the vibe, and I just taught this awesome lesson, and it just went over. I just
fell on
wasted my
deaf
breath.
ears.
Yeah. But the other thing that I tried to do is, when I'm teaching something, I try not to use words like "I like to do this," or like, because it's not. I'm not going to teach what I do. I'm going to teach jiu-jitsu. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to teach a technique that works for somebody who's not flexible, for somebody who's not strong, for somebody who might be a little bit overweight, for somebody who might be 5'1", for somebody who might be 6'7". I want the technique to be pretty like universal, in the fundamentals of that technique. Now, everybody that I just mentioned, every body style is going to have a way to compensate for whatever the reason or for whatever they have to do to make the move work. But I got to hit these 2 or 3 fundamental points of the move that make it the jiu-jitsu language, the universal language. And I really feel like as a martial art, that's what jiu-jitsu is. It's the universal language of your body, where if we just do these fundamental things with our bodies, whether we're creating an angle, creating a frame, creating a wedge, if we just do these things, what's going to end up happening is we're going to put ourselves more often than not in an advantageous position, and we're going to put our opponent in a disadvantageous position. And there's going to be a fight in between those goals being met. But on the same time, if you have somebody who's super flexible, it's hard to tell them to not be flexible. If you have somebody who's super strong, it's hard. But I've always, there's a term that I've always heard, like NASCAR racers use, like it's easier to pull a rope than push it. So if you have somebody, driving too fast and wearing out the tires or whatever like that, it's easier to slow them down than somebody who drives slow and tell them to speed up. And so if you have somebody who's kind of like this, a wound up like a coil, it's easier to pull them, throttle them back, and work with them than it is who somebody who just doesn't want to do anything.
Yeah, more timid person to get them to be more aggressive. That is very difficult.
You have to learn how to learn too as a student. That's the thing. Like it's
learning how to learn.
The teaching is 50% of it. The other half's on the student, and they have to And when I say learning how to learn, that's it's not just the lesson you got taught today. Like you were talking about how you might not have articulated how to triangulate one lesson that you did 3 weeks ago to this lesson today. But the student, in a certain sense, once you hit those advanced ranks, that's your job, in my opinion. I mean, that's why you're an advanced rank. It's like, hey man, you're
responsible for the information.
Yeah, we're giving you the information. You create the puzzle. And Pedro Sauer said something to me about doing he was teaching back escape or whatever, and it was he was like, look, all these techniques and all the details. He said, like if you take a beautiful picture and you create a puzzle piece, you just take all the outside pieces, okay, and that's like the white and blue belt level of how to do the technique. And then you take all the other pieces, oh, this is obviously a tree, and you put that in. And the puzzle, but the thing is, the puzzle's never complete. The day I got my black belt was the same day I changed the way I do my arm bars. And I've been doing arm bars and tapping people out for over 10 years. So, that, just learning one little twist in it added to that puzzle that started when I was a white belt. And we can only give you the people the pieces. We can put it together for them, but whenever it comes time for them to perform it when they're sparring, perform it in competition, or teach it themselves, it's on them. And we can always take them under our wing and help them, but I feel like the student should get a little bit of credit, and that's what the belt ranks are.
Yeah.
The student the student should get some credit for what they bring to the table.
Absolutely. How'd you kind of pick the place up and become the owner of Zanshin? How did that happen?
I'm not really sure. It just kind of happened, man. I became a silent partner to a full-fledged partner, and then then I just kind of started footing the bill.
Okay. And that started happening when? Purple belt or brown belt?
Yeah, it was purple belt, yeah.
Okay. What kind of – let's just talk about, your journey through the belt ranks. Let's just start with just timeline. How much time – because, we have a lot of students. There are a lot of students, not just here. But they get frustrated with the time that they spend at a specific belt rank. How long were you a white belt to blue belt?
White belt to blue belt was Well, I guess that's with Bob. It was
yeah. I know
it
that.
was,
I'm not talking about when you did judo
okay,
or the
all
MMA
right.
no-gi stuff. It's not just Brazilian
Let's
Jiu-Jitsu.
see. It was 2.5 years.
2.5 years, great number. You know, I tell our students, because I always want to give the guy who was the D1 All-American, for him to understand, could take you 6 months. So I say 6 months to 2.5 years is a good time to go from white to blue. And like I think what you just said was awesome, because a lot of people, they've been training here pretty close to the 2-year mark. They just got a green belt. Just got one. It's like, but you shouldn't compare yourself to other people.
Right.
Also, but I think you are normal, whatever normal is. You are in the middle if you do it between 6 months and 2.5 years, because like 6 months is a guy that's not normal, but if you're a D1 All-American, that's normal.
Well, like
you can get a blue belt. But what about blue to purple?
3 years.
Okay, and purple to brown?
18 months.
And then brown to black.
About another 18 months, maybe 2 years. No. August 2015 to February 2018. So that was almost 3 years.
Okay, two and a half years.
Yeah.
So like purple to brown was your
my fastest. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's cool. What belt do you really feel you learned the most in, or was most fulfilling for you to be in?
Interesting question. I tell you, about the time I stopped caring about the belts was when I got my purple belt. And
'cause that's, first off, purple belt's like, I made it.
Yeah.
I'm advanced.
You're an advanced rank at purple belt. That's a lot of the old school guys considered the purple belt a professional belt.
Purple belt and up is advanced.
Yeah. And so when you look at what a purple belt should be able to do is if you present them with any position, they have an answer. They have a defense and an offense. And I'm not talking about just basic positions, just any position.
And they could perform it on you as even as a higher rank than them.
Yeah.
You know, if you give them an inch, they'll take that.
Right.
They'll take that arm or that sweep or that pass or that takedown. Yeah.
So I look at purple belt as the person that probably has black belt level knowledge, just hasn't tied it all together yet.
It's funny that you say that, because like you said that when you got your purple belt, that's when you stopped caring as much.
Yeah.
That's also the fastest jump up. You said in 18 months you went from purple belt to brown belt.
Yeah.
So like that's cool to see, like I got, now I'm here, I've arrived.
Right.
You got it, and then it's like, okay, now that I've gotten this belt that's taken me so long to get to, and now I'm in advanced rank, now I just don't even care about it anymore. And what happened? 18 months later, you got the next highest rank.
Yeah,
that's
true.
That's pretty cool to see. Any particular belt where you learned like a very valuable lesson? Like blue belt, you really learned that defense was more important than whatever it could be.
I think
something connected for you.
I think one of the things that I learned as a blue belt was that to a white belt, your words carry some weight, especially when they may look up to you or they may be asking you questions. Like if I hear like a blue belt now or a white belt or like a purple belt just giving bad advice to a white belt, I kind of often think about myself, was I giving bad advice at that level?
Like your brother making you puff on cigarets when
Exactly.
you were a little kid.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah. So it's like at that blue belt level, when I was getting I started having to kind of be a leader in the room. I think that there was a whole lot of techniques I learned, but it was more about just assimilation. Just trying to be a team player. It's not about me now. As I already got my rank, I knew then when I got my blue belt, I was like, well, I'm not getting a purple belt anytime soon. but all these people behind me are trying to get their blue belt, and it's kind of like, and they're looking to me to help them because I'm the only person in the class that had tested for the blue belt, and so. And it was all closed door sessions, you know.
Right,
That's how all of our tests are, you know.
In your association, there's like a little bit of kumite kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's like
testing, so.
you get in there and it's like, you know, it's pretty
closed door.
It's
like,
closed door. Nobody can watch. Nobody like
what kind of dim mock are these guys doing in here? You know?
It's kind of interesting, and but like I say, I mean, I tested 4.5 hours for my blue stripe, and then another 4 hours for my blue belt. Wow. My purple belt exam was 6 hours. I mean, it was, you know, it's more of a kind of like, not like an active attrition, but it was.
Are you doing it with other people though? Almost like a training session, kind of.
The higher ranks in the association that are teachers. That's it.
Okay.
Or somebody else teaching, or testing with you.
It's the setting is not only you and one other individual with the spotlight on you and the other people at a table or seated telling you what to do or asking you questions. It's not like that.
It's like us right here. We're all in gis. We're like, you know, like got some forms in front of us, just like notations and stuff like that. And then we're going over some fundamental stuff. If I got more than one person testing with me, then we're gonna be testing together, training together, and stuff like that. But like, you know, my instructor might say, I need you to escape. Show me 2 ways to escape from the mount. And then it'd be like, all right, you're going to escape from the mount. It's like, all right, this time, person on top, hold him down. And so, you know, he wants to see an escape, you know, with resistance, right? And then if he don't like something he sees, he'll do it again. We'll do it again. Or if you're using too much power, or using flexibility, like, and then as I got it more advanced in rank, I started realizing, like, hey, he's not trying to see me escape the mount. He's trying to see me use jiu-jitsu, because the person that might be on the mount might be Derek, who's a black belt in Nashville, and he's 285 pounds. He's like Shane. He's just one of those kind of strong guys.
You may not escape the mount.
Exactly.
And that, but escaping the mount or not isn't the point of the test.
Exactly. The test is he's looking at he's not just looking at my technique, he's looking at my not my aura, but my whole attitude towards escaping. Am I staying calm? Am I using jiu-jitsu? And sometimes, you know, you could be winning a match, but you're not using jiu-jitsu. You're just grappling. You know, you're out grappling the person. Jiu-jitsu is more of a mindset, you know, but or a system and a strategy.
The test is not the test.
Exactly, yeah, and your test is not the same as my test. This is where you were talking about like the 6 month to 2 year thing. You know, like my coach one time told me, he's like, yeah, you're kind of athletic, so I was like, oh, thanks. Yeah, I was like, yeah. So
it wasn't a compliment.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? He was like, and so I'm testing with a guy who, like, you know, was a lot less athletic than I was, but had been training for a little bit longer than me. But when he did the technique kind of real fluid, and it was like he was displaying some jiu-jitsu. And so when I was doing it, it was like an explosion of power or something like that. Like, you know, and the same result happened, but it was like, yeah, but could you do that if you were him? Because the technique wasn't there. So, like I said, it was like so he actually would hold people like myself or people like Bob at a higher standard. It's like, well, if you're such an athlete, if you're so good, if you're so coordinated, well, then you should. But in 6 months training, you should be 10 times better than the person who's not. And so it's like your curve changes. And I think that's kind of something that, from a teaching standpoint, I look at that. If I see somebody who's an athlete or somebody who's doing something really, like, because they're physically capable of doing it, that's when we're talking about it's easier to pull a rope than push it. Yeah, I want to throttle that person back and so they can kind of learn how to learn to break down movements, because then when they get advanced, they're going to be so much more effective and efficient.
So as far as like being a coach,
Mm-hmm.
now you are a black belt, and now you are responsible for all these people. What do you think is the toughest thing about being an instructor? Period.
There's a thing about, because you get close with your students. You generally have a like an emotional stake in them doing well.
It's a reflection of you.
Yeah, and it's just like when they do something right and you see that confidence, because adults aren't much different than kids. When they get a confidence boost, when they get some sort of sense of fulfillment or purpose, their eyes light up just like a child's does. So to me, my job is to be able to be very fluid in the way that I translate and speak to somebody. Because if you came in and you were like, wanting to do MMA, but you're wanting to learn just, fundamental Gracie Jiu Jitsu, well, I'm going to start teaching you the same way that I might teach somebody who's an accountant and, is just trying to get in shape.
We do that here too.
But
yeah,
when we're having the one-on-one conversation, it's going to be different.
Correct.
The one-on-one conversation is going to be, to help you reach your end goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you have a whole lot of students, keeping up with that, with everybody's individual goal, and then taking the time to talk to them and things like that, like that's where I was talking about the weight that your words carry. You kind of have to be really careful sometimes with, because I'll say this right now, I don't want to train with anybody who is afraid to roast me. Like I want them when we're off the mats to make fun of me the same way any of my other boys or like my friends would. You know what I'm saying? Like that's how we communicate, and we're just I want to be jovial and be positive all the time. Some people I've realized that like they're never gonna
open up like that.
Yeah, open up like that, and that's okay. But
might not even be their nature.
Yeah, it's not their nature. But man, you get these interpersonal things that happen in the gym because you have all these different personalities.
100%.
And it's a task as a teacher. That's almost harder than it's just keeping all the personalities when we're from this time period to this time period. It's jiu-jitsu, y'all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't want any politics on the mat. I don't want any kind of I don't care about your corona theories or whatever, you know what I mean? Or, we could roast each other in separate group chats for that stuff. But I mean, it's just part of it. But like I say, if you're in a class with me and I'm teaching something and you crack on me or joking around with me and everything, like, I'm all for it. I love that, that some of my students that are teenagers now that have all graduating high school now and everything, they're the best trash talkers because we've been talking trash with them since they were in the 5th grade, and these now you could say anything to them. Mentally, it doesn't bother them. They will cut a promo on anybody. They don't care. They don't care.
The next question I had is, what is your proudest moment as a coach, or what are you very proud of as a coach? Is your youth kids program's ability to talk shit one of your proudest moments as a coach?
It's up there.
Okay.
I can put it this way, like when my kids, when Shane or Tim or somebody walks onto that mat and I've been teaching the kids class, those kids will roast Shane just like any of us would. And so you got this bear coming onto the mat who just could tie them in a knot and throw them through a basketball hoop.
Break their arm off.
And they're just and they don't care. They're just like oh, look at this ugly joker. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
I'm gonna give them some heat.
Yeah, it's just it's one of my proudest moments, and I've got other students that are going on into college wrestling now, and I know that mentally they're for one, they got each other's backs, but which is kind of cool to see. But basically, they like it's talking crap to each other and laughing and being that and having that connection is all part of their culture now too. Like it's different. We don't. I know a lot of people. I'm all for the traditional martial arts, but like when I bow off the mat, those relationships don't change when you're out on the street. It's still the coach student, but the dynamic does, and I love that we can all be like more like siblings than this militaristic ranking style.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's cool. That I think that's kind of unique to jiu-jitsu.
It is.
Is the
In a lot of
relationships
ways,
that we bond with people that give us money for a product or service.
Yeah.
You don't always develop a connection with the butcher or the bagger at Publix. Sure, sometimes, or maybe on a small level or joke level, maybe you do link up for beers, a couple times, but that's more rare, I think.
Yeah.
I never developed relationships with people that were so different in age or ways of thinking or life experiences that were different than mine. I never developed a relationship with these types of individuals like I have with jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And I do believe in the personal connection of jiu-jitsu between people and bringing people together. But I think that that's unique. I also believe in making money and raising a family and being a businessman too. But I don't think that other businesses allow you to develop that type of connection with the consumer as the modern martial arts do.
Right. Well, I've always appreciated your term, your use of the term academy, because this is what, at a certain point, just like in anything else, there's a time where your students become your training partners. All right, and it's recognized that you are the one that is facilitating the academy. Okay, you're the one facilitating for all this to happen. You're the one that is taking the financial risk. You're the one that's taking the personal risks. Okay, and at the same time, just like in a lot of other fields, you have these people coming up, and they kind of become colleagues. They might become teachers themselves. They might be on a paid teacher. They might be apprenticing as a teacher. But ultimately, it's creating this culture, just like a college would. Just like when you talk about whether it be a liberal college or like a private medical school or whatever the case may be, when you use a term like academy, that's basically what we're doing. It's not just jiu-jitsu. You're learning a lot more lessons than jiu-jitsu here.
We talk about that a lot. Like a gym is where you go get your workout,
exactly,
and you get the hell on out.
Yeah.
An academy, what is it? It's a place of learning.
Right.
And I tell these guys all the time, and I talk to my white belts the same way I talk to the black belts, in that giving a good education is what's important to me. Not making you good at jiu-jitsu. I want to
100%.
educate you in jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai or mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, some of it goes onto the student. Like I do put a lot on my plate. Like the weight on my shoulders is heavy, I feel like. But you are right. It's up to them to get good.
Mm-hmm.
I really am big on me giving a good education.
Right.
And if a guy becomes really good at jiu-jitsu or mixed martial arts or Muay Thai or boxing, then good on them. They did what I tried to educate them with, and maybe they had the financial means to train more often than the other person or what have you, or the more time free. That's on them.
Right.
But to be able to give that education is super important. That's what gets done at an academy or a school.
Right.
It's very important to me.
Well, that's the difference too, in that, like you're talking about, like your students essentially are growing up you know, and they're gaining that confidence to, you know, talk shit to Shane or other people, you know, you know, I mean, but behind the humor in it, those people have gained that confidence that propels them in life. Like they're not going to be they're not going to go in these shells. They're not going to, you know, be scared to be outspoken. They're not going to
Exactly.
So, you know, that's what you see in your students. But the same thing from a student's perspective, Cole being my coach is like, you know, we instill our trust in you. And so as an academy, as a growing community, you know, that's where the difference between like a school or, you know, somebody going and buying, you know, a consumer item. It's like, well, man, this guy sold me this knife, you know, it may be good, it may be not.
Right.
But my coach is carrying this knife.
Right.
You know, so I know if he trusts it, I can trust it because you know.
Yeah, you're not paying dues,
Medford
you're paying
Knife and
tuition.
Tool.
Right.
They are not a sponsor of the podcast, though they should be. Maybe we can get a clip of this, Cooter, and put this on my personal Instagram. Yeah. MKT, Medford Knife and Tool. This is what your coach. He's just,
Nice. Yeah.
you know, look at that. Look at that fighter flipper right there.
It's amazing.
I mean, just
yeah.
all American made.
Yeah.
The steel is American. Hand assembled. Hand finished. Come on, Joe, help me out here. Like
You could skin so many catfish with that thing.
That's right.
It's like, you know,
SVN 35 steel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, that, I mean,
Right.
but that's what you get from an academy, and that's what you get from
Right.
coaches. Is like that's where you build that following. Is these people are dedicated to you. I mean, you could take that school anywhere, and you guys obviously have 6 or 7 locations, and you still have that core group that are following with you because they believe and they trust in you. And that's the same thing that happens, obviously here and everywhere else. It's like, you get committed to that coach that, they, like I said, you're building lessons in life. You're not just building like, hey, these are skills that may help you one day. No, I mean, there's so much more that comes out of it. So,
I completely agree.
Cool. I think now's a good time as any. Like, let's go ahead and drop the bomb. Like, this will probably air next week. So you guys that are watching this is like Friday the 20th or Saturday the 25th or 6th. There's been the work for a couple months about you coming over, joining the squad. Let's unite, join forces, and make this thing big. So you guys are going to be coming aboard, and we're going to try to bring all the students in and try to make this thing as big as we can. And I'm super excited to have you guys joining our team and having your advanced ranks and even the lower ranks. Everybody's welcome, but to have you guys joining our team as of whenever we start back.
I know this Corona thing has got us, got everything in kind of this.
Yeah.
We don't know when it's going to crank back up.
Yeah. Well, originally we said May 1st.
Exactly.
Like that was months ago. We said May 1st is going to be the date. But talk a little bit about that. Like, I'm excited to have you, man. Like your knowledge and like I've always had like a great respect for you and obviously Bob. We talked about Bob big time. But like not a lot was getting done for Middle Georgia Jiu-Jitsu or modern martial arts. And Bubby did a great job of doing that in Macon. Right. But for many people, it just wasn't practical for people in Perry or Warner Robins to drive, although I don't think that that's a far distance to drive. Some people scheduled it, make it, but Bob always did it. And then when he just couldn't do it anymore, you picked it up and you had a school and you weren't even a black belt and you're operating, but you kept the torch alive. And I was always had a high amount of respect for that.
Well, I appreciate that, man.
It's cool to have you coming on board.
I'm excited. I think it'll be for the people who want to do jiu-jitsu in this area. I think that any goal that they have with it is going to be facilitated. There's going to be somebody available. We talk about the different types of students, the different types of learning. There's going to be teachers that, you and I didn't have this experience. Bubby didn't have this experience.
No.
And you often kind of think like, what could you have done? Think of the things that you accomplished in martial arts. All right. But if you could have had this facilitation when you first started.
Yeah, like a organized
saying?
structure that led up a ladder in a very organized
Exactly.
way.
In an academy that was facilitated with a culture, with people who have gone down the path, made those mistakes, and it's not like this pioneering thing. So when you first open up an academy, or when you're first in charge of teaching somebody, you always kind of do have this kind of vision of building and being a part of something where people can have what you didn't have. It's the same way with my kids. I want my kids to have what I didn't have coming up, and also I'm excited because my students are going to have what I didn't have as a student.
I try to do that for my students.
Right.
I never yell at my students, or I never say, you guys don't even know how good you have it having me as your coach. If I have said it, it really was as a joke, or I was trying to convey some kind of thing. I know Micah has said that, and some of our seminar guests have said that, when they come to the school. But that's a mission, a very important mission for me here, is what you were just saying, like if you are a soccer mom who's 40 years old, you've never had anything that was yours, close to your heart, like maybe since you were in middle school when you did pageants. I don't mean to place that gender, role on somebody. That just whatever came to my mind. I want to do a good job for you. Your kid just broke his leg after running like Forrest Gump, and he just got, after 36 days in the hospital of having a cast with spikes coming out of his leg, he's just getting good, and we need to build his confidence. I want to give you that education. The guy who is just getting out of the Air Force, who wants to give it his all for 2 years straight and try to see how far he can make this MMA run. I want to give you the same education. So like what you're just saying, like that is important to me, to be able to do that for all. And I don't think that I can do it for all. I can only teach the way I can teach.
Right.
I can't reach everybody. But what I'm trying to do is have enough people and enough great minds in one roof that can reach everybody. And when I say jiu-jitsu is for everybody, I don't mean that it's for everybody. There's somebody out there that is afraid of they have a phobia for personal contact.
Right.
All right, that's not for you.
Yeah.
Okay. You make $200 a month. Okay, jiu-jitsu is probably not for you. But whether or not you're an amputee or a veteran who may be having some PTS issues, or whether you're that soccer mom, or you're a guy in his 60s who just retired and he doesn't know what to do with his time. He's got low testosterone. He doesn't have a peer group of males to have his guy time. We provide that for you.
Right.
I really am trying to cover all of the bases for what you're talking about, to give the total experiences that reaches the most amount of people, to show them we do all martial arts here, but jiu-jitsu is our core martial art, and I'm really trying to spread that to everybody to make this area something that people can be proud of that are from this area.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Happy to be part of it.
That's cool. Anything else you just want to bring up? Closing thoughts, or
No, man.
anything on your mind in this weird Corona season that we're in right now?
No, there's so many crazies, like
The Corona crazies.
like,
That's what I call them.
This is one thing like that I just like, and it might be this might be an unpopular opinion, but my opinion is, just because you have a right to an opinion doesn't mean we all need to hear it. And I don't think anybody needs to hear my opinions on stuff that I don't have anything about. And all I'm going to say is that I really feel for small businesses. I really feel for the people that are that are having trouble staying open, those mom and pop shop restaurants that aren't getting funding, that this is a sad time. My daughter, they're asking me questions, and all I can say is sweetheart, daddy doesn't know, because this is a historical event that we're all being a part of, but I do know that things will get better. With that being said, though, I'm healthy for the most part as far as Corona.
As far as when you're seeing this podcast.
Yeah. So it's and that makes me fortunate, and my family is healthy, and so that's that stays.
That's good. Like of course you're saying, like, I think gratitude is something that I always try to be grateful. That's been my thing for maybe 2 years now, is to have more gratitude for the things that I have in my personal life. And a lot of people get it through religion. A lot of people get it in support groups, but I'm just trying to have it through myself. The discipline it takes to remind myself to have gratitude. But one thing that I feel that somebody has a legitimate gripe in being robbed for, you brought your daughter up, and I know Reeves is like the athlete.
Yes.
And she is lucky because she's not a senior yet.
Right. Yeah.
But I really feel for those seniors that were robbed their last year, and I mean high school or college, their last year in whatever sport that they played. Those wrestlers, those basketball players, those baseball players right now too. Like I do feel for those kids, and I feel not pity, but I do empathize and I do sympathize with those kids and young men and women that are in college as well. That might have been the breakout season, and now you got to go to a combine of some kind to get picked up, or you might get drafted at a lower round next year because you didn't have that senior breakout year that you had been grinding since you were 5 years old for. So I do feel bad for those kids. I know that athletics is something that's like, man, that's so trivial for you to have that mindset, but to those kids and young men and women, that's a big deal to them.
Yeah. In their world, that was everything.
Yeah, that's life.
Yeah.
Just I hadn't really voiced that, but that's how I feel about that.
Well, that was a good opinion to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the shitty ones that get on.
So what do you guys do with this time off? These.
I'm still working. We're still going at the plant, man.
Yeah.
The time off is away from jiu-jitsu is the thing, and this is, I've had knee surgeries. I've had injuries and things like that. I've never been away from the mats though. I've never not been on the mats. I mean, I always put a gi on, even with a leg brace on, or even when my back was hurt, I still put on a gi and crawled around the mats and pointed at people and been like, "Hey, that was great. Hey, let's do better on this," or "Appreciate y'all letting me come hang out."
Yeah.
Like it's just like it's a camaraderie thing.
It is a second family.
Yeah, it's a second family, and plus there is a vibe that you get that releases endorphins or whatever the case may be, where, like you say, especially if you have that atmosphere in that environment where you are more of a fraternal or a sibling type of thing, with everybody all just happy to see you.
Yeah, I think that we are in the 4th week, 1 month roughly of
the shutdown.
Corona season.
Yeah, 4th or 5th.
It was March 10th that our last class, I think, what happened or something.
And
like that.
I think we did ours the week out. We did like the kids that week, but then we did adults for one more weekend.
Yes, yeah.
But I'll just say, like, I know I'm speaking for you and your student base too. Is like, we miss you guys.
Yeah.
Like, you guys probably know that I spend a lot more time with you guys than I do my own family. So I am grateful to be able to have this time off to spend with my family. But you got no clue how much I miss you guys. Like, being on the mats, having the conversation. There are so many of you that are white belts and green belts that I'm thinking of all the time. And we're trying to do our best. Jarrell will be making some phone calls. If you haven't got a phone call from her, check your voicemails. But we're calling every single student to just check up on you guys and see how you guys are. Though one of the ways that we're able to stay afloat is that has always been our policy, because we live in this military town. If we had to pause payments for every TDY or every deployment, like we would have been out of business a long time ago. But like whenever you sign up for your year or 18 months or 2 years, and a lot of martial arts schools, but like, don't tell them to see. I don't mind. This is what we do. This is our policy, is that you're billed for the time,
right,
for your 12 months, 18 months, or 2 years, whatever program you're on, and that we make notes on everybody's account, and then your time is added on the back end. So that's how we're making it through this tough time. I am grateful for all of you that are sticking with us. We have had some cancellations, and the cancellations weren't because they couldn't pay. Like, if any of you guys out there do have an issue with where you are out of work and you can't do that during this time, you guys already know. Reach out to me or reach out to Jara. We'll pause you. We will support you in this time. Thank you for those of you that are in a position to keep those payments, coming, even though you're not training. We know, you guys know that we will take care of you when it comes to it. And we are working on lots of cool things. I think I mentioned it in a private Facebook group, but I have been working on an online academy for you guys for about a year, maybe even a little bit more.
Yeah, probably a little bit longer than that.
And it's not as easy as you guys think it is. Maybe it is. If I could clone me, or we had a really big infrastructure of business where I had somebody where that was their job.
Right.
But I'm working with a guy who's helping me with getting paid almost nothing to do it, and I'm taking the videos and borrowing from this old site that I had and putting it in a private account, and then I'm going to have an online academy for you guys very soon, and it won't be very good. And I know that it was supposed to be like a paid-for site. I'm going to give it to you guys for free for quite some amount of time, at least until we're into our new building or until we iron the bugs out. That's going to be a gift to you guys. It might not be aesthetically as pleasing as I want it to be, or the organization level might not be there. The search capabilities might not be there. Might not have a big window of kids stuff at first, but I'm going to give it to you. And I have a lot of seminars and a lot of cool stuff, and that's coming soon. Please keep watching the team app and the private Facebook groups and stuff. I do miss you guys. That's my point. And I am thinking about you guys, and we're trying to do stuff for you guys. It's not the same. You notice I haven't jumped on the Zoom classes. It's very difficult for jiu-jitsu. We need another person. I know that some of our youth participants, you guys have a sibling. But everybody doesn't. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do the Zoom classes. But I would like to have a Zoom conference with you guys soon. Maybe we'll do that where I can just talk to you guys. So either way, your thought about, I'm grateful to have you as students, and I do miss you guys. Cool.
All right. Well, I appreciate you having me, Cole. Really do, man. Yeah.
Big gulps, huh?
Yeah.
Well, see you later. Yeah. It was awesome having you. We're going to have you again. One cool thing that I'm excited about is like having, maybe we'll just do it as a part of our podcast, but like having specific history sessions.
Yes.
Like I've always bragged to my students how knowledgeable you are, and like I made sure to put martial arts fan and historian in pro wrestling. You know more than anybody else that I know about that stuff, and I can't wait to learn more with you. Have you refer books for me to read, and I'm going to try to get on some of that content. We're going to have some good conversations about pro wrestling, catch wrestling, shoot fighting, judo, jiu-jitsu, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and all that stuff. And I hope that we can get into the real history.
That's right.
Of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu,
right.
and not just what the narrative that's being taught to us. Cool.
All right. I look forward to it. I really do, man. It's going to be fun.
Hell yeah.
All right.
Anything from you?
Good.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.